Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for choosing this talk. My name is Odin, and with me I have
Fatih.
We both work as Android developers for DNB Bank, which is a bank in Norway, not to be confused with the Deutsche Bank. Yep. That's another bank.
We learned that there's another DNB bank in Netherlands.
Yeah.
So it's the Norway version.
Yeah. So welcome to our talk, Getting Your Apps Ready for Material Tree. So first off, I want to start just taking a sidebar to what you can expect the outcome of this talk to be. We want you to provide you with like a kind of a guide to get you to start migrating your apps to Material Tree. But it's important that you know that this talk is not going to be a complete documentation of Material Tree. If you want that, then you can visit the Material.io's web pages. They are quite extensive. I really recommend you to visit that.
The documentation are really good.
Yeah, I agree. So the agenda for today is that firstly we're going to go through the color system in Material Tree. Then we're going to go through how like the typography works. Then we're going to go through some of the major components in Material Tree and how they shifted from Material 2. Then we're going to go through some migration strategies that you can apply for your applications. And then we're going to show like how we started our migration process in DNB. And then in the end, we will share some key takeaways and learnings of what we learned through this process for us. So Fatih, how does actually color system works in Material Tree?
Yeah. So when we say colors, colors are really important for our theming system, right? So without colors, we basically don't have any theming system. So in Material Tree, we have different types of colors, like key colors. Those key colors are accent or natural colors. And those accent colors might be familiar with some of the key colors here, like primary, secondary, from Material Tree. But there is another one, tertiary color, which can be used for balancing the primary and secondary color in Material Tree. Or you have some neutral colors, like the neutral key color or neutral variant color. They are generally used, they're generally grades, shades of grays. And they can be used for the text color, divider, background, etc. We have some additional colors, like arrow colors, or you might even have your product-specific colors. So Material Tree doesn't allows you to actually add more colors. So that means that, like for instance, you might have an arrow color, but the important stuff with the colors is that you have 4 different attributes for each color attribute, like arrow, on color, on arrow color, container, and on container color. That's what is actually different from Material Tree. But we will be talking about the differences between the Material 2 and Material 3 later on in this talk. And there is also something called tonal palettes. And tonal palettes are really important in Material 3. It's not actually new. Like the tonal palette has been there in Material 2, but it was not really visible. But with the Material 3 is gaining a lot from the tonal palettes. What tonal palette is that one color becomes 13 tones. And those 13 tones are from the black to white. And as you can see from here is that one primary color, you just pick one primary color that you want, and you have 13 tones of that primary color. And that is actually being used everywhere in different components. But then why tonal palettes? Like, why do we need to have these 13 tones and use these 13 tones in our apps? There are 3 reasons. The first reason is to establish a context in visual hierarchy. Like, if you have some of the components like this, like toolbar, button, switch, etc., now you can actually relate each component with each other, right? So because they're using some tone of the primary color, and it creates a connection between the components. But how does it create? So in Material Tree, there is something called surface tones. So they are actually, all the components are using the surface tones. And there are 5 different surface tones. And those surface tones are basically the surface color. And on top of that, some tone of the primary color is applied. As you can see here, for instance, as an example, we have the elevated card. Elevated card is using a +1 surface tone, which is the surface tone, and as primary color, some tone of the primary color. But in the +2, I don't know if you can differentiate between that, but the +2 version is the darker primary tone. and +1 is the light version. So it goes up to +5. OK, that was the first reason. And the second reason is that you might have different states for a component. And you might want to just represent the different states for a component, right? So for instance, we have a button, and you might want to represent a different state of the button with a different color. So now you actually use some different tone of the primary color to represent the different states. And Material Tree is using the tonal palette for that. Yes, that was the second one. And the third one is the accessibility. Accessibility is really important in Material Tree. And there is something called a contrast ratio. So contrast ratio is basically the ratio between the colors. And in Material Tree, there are some guidelines to make a component accessible. So in some cases, you might need to have a 3:1 contrast ratio depending on which component you're using and on what color you're using. Or on some cases, you need to have 7:1. For an instance, for an example, so you have the button and the background color here. So 3:1 contrast ratio is OK for this case. And this component is accessible with the 3:1. And you don't really need to worry about this if you set the right colors. So you just set the colors in your theming system, and Material Tree is handling this for you. But then, OK, we have talked about the tonal palettes and the 13 tones, but how are we going to generate these 13 tones? Are we going to sit down and then just try to generate from the black to white? No. Luckily, we have a website called Material Tree Theme Builder. If you go to that website, you have a place where you can actually set the primary, secondary, tertiary, and the neutral color. So if you pick those colors, Material Tree Theme Builder website will give you the tonal palettes for each color attribute you have, like primary, secondary, neutral, neutral variant, etc. Then you can export this. If you're still using the XML, you can export it as an XML format, or if you're using Compose, you can actually export it as a Qt file. Yes, but how does this colors work, Odin?
Yeah, so how does that actually work for us as developers, right? So in Compose, if you're going to use Compose, then you most likely need to either make your own theme function like this, where you're going to provide your content through, or you can use the material one. And in this theme function, they have set something called color scheme, which is a parameter where you can also use the material tree colors, or you can set your own colors, or you can use the copy function to make your own color attribute and use that however you want. But if you want to set your own color attributes class, then you need to actually handle all of these color attributes. So
a lot of colors, right?
There is a lot of colors, so you have all of these colors that you have to set. So you have to kind of find how you're going to map all of these colors, right? And in the view system, it's very similar. You just have to extend the material tree theme in your parent theme, and then you have to set all of the same colors. So there's actually 28 color attributes that you have to set, and you have to find out like kind of how you're going to map this to your color system and how that's going to work in your application.
How are we going to know that which color attribute is affecting which component?
Yeah, that's a great question, right?
Because we have 28 attributes, and do we have to memorize each and every attribute and then say, OK, now if I change this, button component will be affected?
Yeah, that was one of the questions that we asked ourselves when we were trying to migrate our applications. So firstly, we used like this material tree theme builder web page, which was very nice. You can actually just set your primary color, and in the UI, you can see like how are each component affected by each change. But we found like one minor flaw in this this web page was that if you set your primary color, it will auto-generate the on-primary color of these components.
Like I want to actually see like if I change a primary color, like a primary color, or on primary color, then I want to see which components are affected, right?
Yeah.
I think you can't do it with this material tree team builder.
Yeah, we had a lot of like, our designers were like asking a lot about this. So what we did, we also found that like there was something called Compose multi-platform. So we made like a Compose desktop application, and we open sourced this. And here you can actually just play with all of the different color attributes and see how actually, like which components are affected by which change. So we're going to do a small demo of this application. If you want to scan the QR code, you can do so, and then you can download the DMG file and test it out yourself. We also distributed this to our designers to see.
And it's really useful, like if you want to teach or not teach, but like if you want to, have a discussion with the designers and just let them play with something. I think it's a really great tool because we distributed to designers and they had a chance to play with it. For example, here, just a quick demo of that application. You see each and every component here, and you also have all attributes here. So if you, for instance, change the primary color of that attribute, so you're not seeing that because it is here, then, for instance, I want to change it to that color, and then whenever you change it, the primary color is actually changed, as if you see. And you also have a dark mode, and dark mode has different colors, and you want to have the same color, for instance, then it is affected. Like now you're able to see if you change this, which components are affected, then you're immediately seeing the effect of it. I think this is really useful if you have a custom design system. Like if you want to just use the material 2 and then migrate to material 3, maybe it's okay to just use the same colors and then learn what are the additional colors. But if you have a custom design system, I think this is really useful to learn which attributes are affecting which one.
Thanks.
Thank you. At least it was useful for someone, which is nice. All right, let's come back to the presentation.
Yeah. So how does the typography work?
Yeah, so we talked enough about colors. Of course, colors are important, but typography is important, right? In Material Tree, we have 5 different roles for the typography. The first one is the display one. If you want to show a really important text on large screens, you can use display. But what about the smaller size of screen? So if you want to really show an high emphasis text, really important text on the smaller screens, then headline is the way to go. But then if you're looking for something like a medium emphasis basis, then you can use title. But you can also use body for the longer paragraphs and longer text. You also have something called label. Labels are generally used inside another components. For an example, here you have the bottom navigation, and these titles like News, Global, etc. are labels. So that was the typography. That was short, right? Then let's go for the major components.
Yeah, so we will show a bit like how did actually some of the major components change from Material 2 to Material 3. So firstly, we have the top app bar. So the main purpose of the top app bar is to provide some content and some action to your application. And this has gotten support for dynamic colors, which a lot of the components in Material 3 has gotten as well. They don't have the drop shadow anymore. This is like they're using the surface tones to distinguish the visual hierarchy in the screen with this top app bar. And in Material 3, they have defined like 4 different types of top app bars. So firstly, you have like the center of the line. This is going to be like your main entry point of the application. And then you have like small, medium, and large, which is going to be like kind of sub pages of your application, depending on which kind of title that you have and which type of screen that you have. Then in Material 3, you also have something called cards. So they have defined 3 types of cards. Firstly, you have the outline card, and this is if you want to have the strongest emphasis on the content on the card versus the content behind the card. Then you have this distinguished outline of the card, which provides like the most emphasis in Material 3. Then you have something called the elevated card. This one. This uses the drop shadow to to show like the visual hierarchy, and it's like defined as like maybe the medium size emphasis that you have in your application. So if you have something that you want to have like medium focus on, then you can maybe use the elevated card. Then lastly, you have the fill card. This is using the surface tones to display the visual hierarchy, and it is considered the least emphasis.
I think this is a new card type, right? Like we have, we had outline and elevated, but we haven't seen the field before, so it's the new for Material Tree.
Yeah. Then also we have something called switch in Material Tree. This was also in Material 2, but in Material 3 they are considered way more accessible. They have gotten like new color mapping, which meets like new contrast requirements, and also they have like this optional icon on the thumb. This is really nice in Compose. It's just composable, so you can just really animate it and have a lot of fun with it. I've seen some really cool animations with this.
Isn't everything fun with Compose?
Of course. Yeah, it's also gotten like a taller and wider layout track, which also adds to the accessibility improvements that this component has gotten. Here is like a comparison of how it looked in Material 2 versus Material 3, and I must say, like especially like in the off state of Material 2, it's a bit hard to spot, in my opinion at least. But in Material 3, it's way more easy to spot. I think this looks really cool. It looks a bit like more like iOS-y, but yeah. Here's like a small video of how the animation you can set it up.
Yeah. It's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Also in Material 3, they have something called navigation bar. This component has gotten the new color mapping as well as like the top app bar. And also, it doesn't have the drop shadow. It uses the surface tones to distinguish the content on the navigation bar versus the content behind it. It's also gotten like the pill shape indicator to show like the active state of this component. And it's like when I see Material 3, at least that's like one of the main points that I like. Okay, this is they have used Material 3 in this application.
I think if you see this, but like this bottom navigation, then that app is using Material 3.
Yeah, I totally agree.
For sure.
Yeah. It's also been like it's gotten a bit taller, the layout track in Material 3, so that's also adding to the accessibility feature. Furthermore, in Material 3, it's recommended that you have between 3 and 5 destinations, and you can have them with and without label text. But if you want to have a label text, it's important that it's short and that it provides meaning for the user, so that you don't have these concatenation issues for smaller screens and all of this stuff. Also, you can have like this optional badge, and in Compose, of course, this is very easy now because you don't have to do all of this SVG file mapping, and you don't. Yeah, it's very easy to
coming
use.
Built in.
Yeah.
This is really nice.
Yeah. Then we have chips.
Yes, chips. You might be familiar with the chips with the Material 2, but in Material 3, there are some changes with the chips. If you can see now, like the chips were more circular, but now with the Material 3, it's more rectangular. And we still have 4 different types of chips. In Material 2, we still had 4 different types of chips, but some of the types has been changed. Like if you see now, input and filter chips are the same. They are not changed. Action chips becomes now 2 different types of chips. The first one is the assist chip. Assist chips are the chips that you can use it for quick actions. For instance, set an alarm for 5:30 in the morning. Then you can have an assist chip there, and then that's the quick action, and you can use it as a chip. And sorry, for the suggestion chips, as you can understand from the name, it's the suggestion. Like, for instance, if you're in the chat app, and that chat app can use suggestion chips to suggest some small text to you, like some suggestion text, and then you can just click it and then send the message. You also have had choice chips, but now the choice chips has been placed under the filter chips. So if you're looking for the choice chips, you need to go to filter chips and do some modifications. Like if you're migrating from Material 2 to Material 3, you still need to change the styles for the choice chips. And they're under the filter chips. And the buttons. Buttons are really important, right? And buttons are everywhere. So without buttons, we're not going to be able to have any good app. So with the buttons, there are some changes. As Odin explained, just like the cards, we have a new button type called field button. If you're looking for something which has the least emphasis, and if you don't want to, like get a lot of attraction from the user, but still want to place a button there, then you can use the field button type. Another change is that the floating action button is now rectangular. Before it was circular shape, now it has the rectangular shape. And the third big difference is that, I don't know if you have ever seen this, but this might look like a new component. Yes, it's a new component, but it's an upgraded version of the toggle buttons. Like previously it was known toggle buttons, now they are called segmented buttons. And they can be used in places of chips where you have less than 5 items. Well, how about from material 2 to material? How are we going to do that migration?
Yeah, that's a good question. So firstly, we asked ourselves, like, when should you actually migrate? So according to Google, of course, this is as soon as possible.
Everything is immediate.
Yeah. But if you don't have that opportunity to do it as soon as possible, they have at least described some scenarios that you should consider. And the first scenario is that if you don't have any blockers, then in Compose, you can start like a phased migration to material 3. But then if you have some component that is not available in Compose yet, then you still can do a phased migration, but you will need to support your version of material 2 for like a bit more extended time period. And then in this third scenario is that you have your design system and then you have all of your designers and you have not talked to them yet, then that might be a good place to start.
Please talk with the designers first.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, so if you're going to do a phased approach in Compose, the first thing you would do is that you would add like your M3 dependency alongside with your M2 dependency. Then you will make like a M3 version of your app team and have that alongside with your M2 version of your app team. Then you will do like a migration of individual modules, individual screens, or individual components to M3. And then when you're completely done, you can just move away from M2 and not support that anymore and remove that from your apps. But how does that actually work for view system, Fatih?
Maybe for views it's even easier, like some of the people should be. But like for views, what you need to do is that you just need to replace the material components in your parent theme, replace it with the material 3. And what you need to do is that you configure your app theme and also like handle the breaking changes. For instance, I mentioned about chips, right? So you still have to, for instance, migrate the choice chip, the filter chip, etc. Fix those styles in your theme XMLs or style XMLs, and you're done for views. Yep. Wow. And for material 3 at DMB, how are we handling that? Just a disclaimer that we haven't finished everything yet, but this is still an ongoing process. But let me explain how is the design system in DMB. So, oops, we have a custom design system. OK, something's happening to my clicker. It's a custom design system called Euphemia. And this is open source if you want to check it out. So you can check it out from this website. So this is actually for DMB, but we open sourced it. In the Android side, in the mobile side, we have a library for the Android called Euphemia Android. Under the hood, it uses the material components. And how our apps are working is that instead of directly using the material components and trying to handle all these guidelines inside the apps, and that will, of course, break the consistency between the apps. So we said that we need to have a library, and then we need to share that library. So we have a library, and our apps are using that library. But that library doesn't really have a single artifact. So it has several artifacts. And two of the artifacts are the Viv system, like the Viv version, and for the Compose version. And under the hood, they're, of course, using the Viv version of the material components and Compose version of the material components. But now you can see, right? So we actually have a lot of things to do. Like one of them is the Viv. How are we going to migrate the Viv system to material 3? And the other one is the Compose, because we have a mixed mixed things in the app. So this clicker today is way faster than me. OK. For the Viv system, what we need to do is that, of course, as I told you, we need to just migrate to material 3, but how are we going to do that? first, you need to go to the parent style of your apps team, and you need to replace that parent style, the material components, with the material tree. That's the first thing that you need to do. And then after doing that, you will have some color attributes that you need to set. So you need to still set all the 28 color attributes, which I'm not going to set it here. Then, of course, you also have to handle some breaking changes like chips and some of the other components. And that's mainly it, and that's what we have done in the AMB. Like, we have just done it for the view, and it's ready, it's there. But how about Compose? I think Compose is a bit different than the view, right?
Yeah, so for Compose, what we did was that we had our M2 version of our app team, and we needed to provide an M3 version alongside of the same app team, since we needed to support both M2 and M3 for a short period of time. So we had like our team was kind of wrapping this material team, and then we also had to wrap like our version of material 2 team, and then use composition local provider to provide the correct colors for the correct team. So here you can see we are actually providing 2 sets of colors through our content. There might be another way to do this, but this is the way that approach that we took, and it worked. It worked okay, so yeah.
Let's use the word opinionated.
Yeah, opinionated.
Opinionated way of doing things.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how far we went with in Euphemia.
Yep. So like the current status is that the Euphemia Android library is now migrated to Material Tree, but we are still doing some changes in the app side because we have some breaking changes, etc. So still we are working on this, and hopefully in a near future we're going to have this Material Tree inside our app. It was not an easy process because with all this branding colors and everything, and with the collaboration with the designers, I think, yeah, we're getting there. What are the takeaways and learnings? I think for colors, we need to talk with the designers first, right? So that's the most important thing. If you want to do something, first talk with the designers. I think we have done that mistake, and it's really not okay to just randomly change the branding colors. We learned that, so luckily we didn't have that in production. And we had lots of color attributes, so we needed to, because we have a custom design system, we needed to actually know what attributes we have in Material Tree and how are we going to map our current attributes to those material attributes. So just really important. And for the tonal palette, so we have been experimenting with the tonal palette, like if we should use it or not, because we have this custom design system, which doesn't really use the tonal palette, but when it comes to Material Tree, you have the tonal palette. So we have been experimenting this tonal palette in our design system and how we can integrate with the Material Tree design system. And also for typography, so there were 5 different roles. As I explained, like you can still use those 5 different roles, but you still have to find a mapping from how you can map it from Material 2 to Material 3 according to your needs. And that was for the typography. And for the components part, I think there are some components which got a bigger change, like the navigation bar and some of the buttons, right, like segmented buttons and also floating action button. And you also have a lot of changes, of course. But like if you're going to start migrating to Material Tree, I think it's better to maybe start with those components like switch button, floating action button, and bottom navigation. And as I said, like now, if you're looking for toggle buttons, then toggle buttons has been named to segmented buttons. And if you're going to start migrating to Material Tree in Compose, I think it's better to just start with the scaffold APIs, because scaffold APIs are now different. And if you just start with the scaffold APIs, like migrating to scaffold to Material Tree version, I think it's going to be a lot easier for you to just handle the migration. And last but not least, like the most important thing is, I think, if you can have a screenshot testing for all components, please do that before the migration, because we had this screenshot testing for each and every component, and it really helped us to just compare. Even if you're opening a PR, you can see the differences for those components when you migrate that component. So if you can have it, I think with Compose, it's a lot easy. So you can have screenshot testing even before starting the migration process. Thanks for listening to us. I think that was all for today. If you have any questions, I think we can go for questions.